Political correctness, the scourge to great comedy everywhere. Comedians from Seinfeld to John Cleese rail against it. Ricky Gervais has taken to Twitter to proclaim himself under attack, and Adam Carolla complains about it. Wait, who's Adam Carolla again? And so, whenever a joke falls flat, whether it be a comedian or your neighbor on Facebook, well, there's a defense. I was only joking. Get a thicker skin. I was only joking. Lighten up and learn to take a joke. I was only joking. Get a sense of humor. The implication, of course, is that it's not really that there was anything wrong with the person who told the joke, or that the joke itself is troubling. The real problem is with the person who didn't like the joke. And that makes sense. See, while plenty of people like to see being offensive in and of itself as being some sort of transgressive act, they don't really want the baggage that might come with that. They don't want to be accused of being a racist or a sexist or homophobic. Deep down, no matter how much folks might like to be offensive, they know that being a racist or a sexist or a bigot in general, it's not a good thing. It's not a cute personality quirk to be ignored, so even if one is telling, say, a racist joke, they think the defense of, well, it's just a joke, has some really great meaning or proof that the joke doesn't represent their views. They just find racism funny. But here's a, well, dirty little secret about jokes. People tend to tell jokes that connect to how they actually feel. See, guys who tell jokes about how stupid women are or how they never shut up or whatever, well, those jokes tend to not be terribly far from how those guys think. I can honestly say I don't really know any guys who respect women who tell many, if any, sexist jokes that put women down as a whole. And honestly, when it comes to only joking, it seems like a pretty weak defense. Mocking safe spaces while getting mad about political correctness, for example, well, that's absurd. You are actually demanding comedy be a safe space, but only for you. You want to be free to tell the jokes without the criticism. Now, comedians will often talk about stuff like live shows in clubs and Twitter are places to kind of test drive jokes. And that's fine, I get it. You have a joke that you think might be great, and you might have not realized where it might not be so good, but you want to give it a shot, see what the reaction is. And maybe the reaction's not so positive. Maybe people look and go, oh, God, this is crap. This is terrible. And they might list their reasons, and some of those reasons might be just general, their racist jokes or their sexist jokes or whatever. But the response to people telling you that a joke failed is to investigate whether the joke was worth telling. Now, your job is not to complain about the people that did not think the joke was funny. If you're getting a negative response, consider that maybe the joke's not that good. It is not that we're suddenly way more sensitive than we used to be, or that we're thinner-skinned. Lenny Bruce was thrown in jail for offending the powerful elites. Monty Python faced blasphemy charges for the life of Brian. People have always challenged those who challenge the social norms. There have always been people trying to silence people they disagree with. To this day, conservatives complain about TV shows having gay characters in prime time, and thus forcing them to have to deal with explaining the gays to their children before they're ready. People demand humorists and storytellers don't criticize their personal ideology all the time, and have since before the dinosaurs. But of course, the Pythons were being satirical with Life of Brian and much of their other material. And the thing with satire is that comedians who are regularly commenting on social and political issues in a political satire or just in a satirical stance, well, they're even if they're taking a bigoted stance, you can often look back through their material and interviews and see that they don't actually hold to those stances, that, they offer support. The bigotry is a mockery of the bigots. And sometimes that's very effective, but other times it's not as much, because sometimes it still looks like you're just kind of punching down. And frankly, most of the current critics of political correctness, well, they're not masters of satire. Many are straight up just joke tellers who apparently have found that it's harder to tell jokes in this climate. Whatever this climate really means. Yet you also have guys like Bill Maher who, used to, he's kind of the guy who made politically incorrect a thing because he had, a TV show called Politically Incorrect. But sometime since losing his show on ABC and starting his show on HBO, he's slowly been morphing into an angry old man yelling at young whippersnappers to get off his lawn. And he just keeps going farther. When you think Jordan Peterson sounds like a voice of reason, your satirical edge is frayed. Dennis Miller used to make dry-witted commentary on the hypocrisies of those in power. Now he's a Sean Hannity type of talking head masquerading as a satirist protecting the halls of power. And Ricky Gervais, he's trying to appear edgy, and I guess he is, for 1992. Whining about how hard it is to be an atheist when you've had 2 popular television shows, several podcasts, and so on, feels like that line from Rockin' the Suburbs by Ben Folds. You don't know what it's like to be male, middle class, and white. Now, Folds was mocking that attitude, but a lot of white male comedians seem to think this is a serious sentiment. No, what's different today from previous years, it's not that we're more sensitive or can't take a joke. It's that social media allows us to hear voices that used to be easy to drown out. Marginalized voices of minority groups, from immigrants to trans men and women. They have voices now that are a lot harder to overlook and ignore. That's what's different. In 2017, comedian Hari Kondabolu and True TV released a documentary called The Problem with Apu.
I hate Apu. And because of that, I dislike The Simpsons.
The whole series.
Yeah.
I love The Simpsons because...
You hate yourself.
My name is Hari Kondabolu. I've had a great career filled with laughter, critical acclaim. I should be completely happy. But there's still one man who haunts me. Apu Nahasapima Pedalon.
Please pay for your purchases and get out and come again.
Apu, in case you were in suspended animation for the last 30 years, is the South Asian, or specifically an Indian immigrant, owner of the Quickie Mart. And according to the guy who introduced him in a script, states he specified that the guy was not Indian. He then proceeds to explain the table read where Azaria looks at the script and did a rather off-Indian accent. And the all-white staff busted out laughing, and it stuck. Azaria himself says he pointed out that this was not a particularly good accent, and the staff said, who cares? And sure, the show over the years has expanded the role of Apu, fleshing him out and giving him a family, but even those things leaned heavily into stereotypes of Indians. Now, reaction to the documentary was mixed. Lots of South Asians seemed to be relieved somebody was actually calling this out. And a lot of white people thought Kondabolu was being, ridiculous. How dare he challenge the beloved Apu? Everybody loves Apu. I even read an op-ed by a South Asian writer who thinks Hari is being ridiculous. As you can imagine, white people glommed onto this because it's, one of our favorite things. Non-white people express disagreement with something suggesting racism, and white people seek out a person from that group who says the other people are way overblowing the situation and being silly. I mean, Dinesh D'Souza has made an entire career out of being white conservatives' minority friend. Simpsons writer Dana Gould defended Apu by, among other things, noting that certain accents are just funny to white Americans. And that's pretty... No. That's just totally racist. Honestly, unless you've watched the documentary, I think the defense of The Simpsons and its staff against Kondabolu is, well, damned ignorant and not worth listening to, because he makes it incredibly clear and has repeatedly pointed out that he loves The Simpsons, and that's why it stung. But the worst part, the defense that everybody brings up, is that The Simpsons mock everybody. Gold challenges Hari on this point by asking why he's not bothered by the stereotype of rich people in Mr. Burns. Kondabolu points out that Burns is a parody of the rich megalomaniac, not rich people. But really the thing that gets me about the whole they make fun of everybody defense, it's lazy. Just like Hari's point with Mr. Burns, most of the stereotyped characters are not solely defined by an accent. And the characters who are, they're highly outdated stereotypes. Willie is a red-headed Scotsman, and we know this from his overwrought Scottish accent. The joke is not limited only to his accent, of course. He, wears a kilt and has lots of jokes about not wearing underwear under his kilt, and he plays bagpipes and stuff because, that's something we all think Scottish people do. But it's really that he says some freaking bizarre things when you're watching the, he'll pop up and just say some sort of weird crap and run away. And you could strip him of various things, the bagpipes and the kilts and the accent, and he'd still have the same outlandish personality. It's still there. You could build it around anything. Dr. Nick, the joke is not really his, is it Argentinian? I think it might supposed to be, accent, but the joke is that he's a hack doctor. Smithers is not a gay parody. The whole joke is not that he likes men. The real joke is that he's in love with the unredeemable Mr. Burns. And even the Mexican Bumblebee guy, he's a parody of a specific type of Mexican television personality. He's not the Mexican people. I mean, Dr. Hibbert is more poking fun at Cosby, and now that's just creepy. And I don't really know that Carl represents anything uniquely seen as stereotypically black. They're just really a couple of guys living in Springfield. Now, nobody's going to mistake these stereotypical characters as representative because they're all highly outdated stereotypes. But Apu, he fits squarely within stereotypes still held today by many white people. He's an Indian man who runs a convenience store, has an arranged marriage, has statues of Ganesh, has 8 kids that his wife gave birth to all at once. Of course, as lazy as they make fun of everybody is, the Simpsons writer said, "Hold my beer."
Well, what am I supposed to do?
It's hard to say. Something that started decades ago and was applauded and inoffensive is now politically incorrect. What can you do?
Some things will be dealt with at a later date.
If at all.
Well, for the Simpsons writing staff, the answer to that question is as little as possible. Now, sadly, Matt Groening fell back on the tired canard of people just like to pretend being offended. Hank Azaria, on the other hand, has floated all sorts of peace attempts, including not continuing as Apu. So, thumbs up to Hank Azaria for actually taking this seriously and having something of substance to offer. Now, in relation to all of this political correctness stuff, the most recent incident that has just fascinated me was the 2018 White House Correspondents' Dinner, in which conservatives and liberal journalists were climbing all over each other to demand that comedian Michelle Wolf apologize for her awful and sexist remarks regarding Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But in fact, the same people who voted for Trump, saying they loved how he was not politically correct, well, suddenly they're clutching their pearls about her crass remarks and brutal sexism.
Since when has it been okay to make cheap jokes about a woman's appearance?
So incredibly disrespectful. It was shameful. It was disgusting.
I thought the language was filthy. It was really over the line, X-rated. It's a complete disgrace that there wasn't a single person on the dais that interrupted that woman as filth was coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, why didn't someone stop that woman?
Now, first off, every other year, the White House Correspondents folks hire a comedian who leaves them shocked. But Wolf has stand-up and regular appearances on The Daily Show to check out. Nothing she said that night would have been a surprise to anyone who had actually, studied up a little.
Yeah. Should have done more research before you got me to do this.
And again, these folks miss that it's not merely that the president is vulgar, but how he is vulgar. It's not just the words he's using, it's how he's using them. Michelle Wolf never insults the looks of Sanders.
I actually really like Sarah. I think she's very resourceful. Like, she burns facts, and then she uses that ash to create a perfect smoky eye. Like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's lies. It's probably lies.
She actually mocks Sanders as a liar. And newsflash, folks, that's not a joke, it's just a fact. She mocks Kellyanne Conway's last name that sounds like Con and Way. And then Michelle makes fun of her own appearance on that same line of reasoning. Really, the closest thing she comes to maybe an unfair sexist comment is her reference to Megyn Kelly, which is pretty much just calling Kelly a nice queen.
Megyn Kelly got paid $23 million by NBC. Then NBC didn't let Megyn go to the Winter Olympics. Why not? She's so white, cold, and expensive, she might as well be the Winter Olympics.
But you know what the actual most offensive part of her speech was?
Flint still doesn't have clean water.
Yeah, the part that literally nobody felt was important to talk about. Because why do kids need safe drinking water? A few years ago, Weird Al Yankovic released an album which used the word spaz, which is a short form of the word spastic. People reported to Al that the word is, in some places, seen as a slur referring to people with spastic conditions. Of course, the PC crowd descended on Al, tore him to pieces, and he went off on those people, telling them that they needed to get thicker skin and learn how to take a Oh, wait. That's actually not what happened. Instead, Al listened. He took this concern to heart. Al's a noted humorist and had never intended to hurt anyone. His songs are meant to be fun, and fun for everybody. Al issued a thoughtful apology. And sure, the record was out. It was not something that could just be changed on the CD. It was a crowdfunded project and would have been ridiculously costly to recall the album, re-record the song, repress the CDs, and so on. But that's not really what the folks who took their concern to Al were asking for either. They appreciated the apology and the acknowledgement. A lot of comics complain about PC culture. But the truth is, a lot of those criticisms seem like they're kind of lazy. Rather than considering whether maybe their act is outdated and not funny, they assume the problem is not them, it's us. They don't want to deal with the challenge of how to tell better jokes, funnier jokes. They don't want to have to face the criticism that requires that they might have to try harder. Frankly, I'm kind of tired of the excuses of comedians and Facebook comedy wannabes who want to blame everyone else for the negative reactions to their jokes and never consider the idea that maybe, just maybe, their jokes suck. Their jokes are not funny. I'm not a comedian. I'm not pretending to be. But I am a consumer of comedy, and I am calling for better product, better jokes, cleverer jokes. I'm asking for comedians to be willing to grow as people and not try and demand that I keep myself back in time so that they don't have to become more relevant to the landscape. I want jokes that make me think, or even just simply amuse me, rather than try and most often fail to shock me. And so, comedians and comedy wannabes, the problem isn't me, it's you.